Hello and welcome to Won't Be Forgetting That, a podcast talking about all of the most awkward and embarrassing moments people have had whilst working in the arts and entertainment industry. I'm your podcast host, Sim Muirhead, and today we have a guest. They are a photographer, a comedian, a storyteller, Nick Robertson.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming on, mate.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about awkward situations.
Yes, well, I love them. And again, I say this on every single episode, so I'm sorry for all the beautiful perverts that listen every week, but this is just my therapy now.
Yeah, great.
Therapy, and then if you say anything really salacious or anything really bad, I keep it for myself, and then when you get famous, I'm going to blackmail you so put me into your things.
Great.
So I have so many stories. Trust me, all these famous people, all you people that are listening, if you've been on the podcast, I've kept all that stuff. Just you wait.
I can't wait to see that folder you've got of all the, like a scrapbook type style of all the secrets of the industry.
It's like under lock and key. I've got like 4 safes within a safe. No one's getting to it, but Deadlock Series 2, all I'm saying, I need a roll on that. Otherwise, some people's heads are going to roll. Now, Nick, I like to start off this podcast with a little bit of a compliment.
Cool.
Because I bring on guests are super talented and I really admire their work, and then essentially just get them to talk about their lowest points in their career, which isn't always the best representation for said guest.
Yeah.
And I never want to do that. So I wanted to start off with, I was a little bit on the fence actually. I heard so many good things about your Melbourne comedy run. So I wanted to compliment it on that. Sorry, English is my second language. But I also wanted to comment on fucking amazing photography skills as well.
Oh, thanks.
So I'll let you choose your compliment. What would you like to be complimented on, Nick?
Well, the comedy is more of the newer one in my my life, so it's maybe I need to bank some of those compliments in my head. So I'd love a compliment on my comedy.
We can get a clean take on that if you want, and you can pop this on a poster. I mean, I'm a nobody.
Yeah, no, I'll take whatever I can
you
get.
Can just put by anonymous underneath if you want. No, I heard like amazing things from both your Adelaide Fringe run and from your Melbourne Comedy Festival run as well. And this is from like a few people that are both in and on the peripheries of the industry as well, I should say, who are not easy to please. Okay. So anyone listening, you simply must go and watch Nick. Cool. I don't know where you are at present time of listening, but go and track him down. You know, I don't know where you're going to be. If you want to give it your home address, maybe people can turn up there as well.
Yeah, come along. Let's have a cuppa or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Have a chat over it.
Nick can do his entire show to you while you sit down having a cup of tea.
Honestly, that's probably a bigger audience than some of the Adelaide Fringe shows that I had.
So we were talking about this just beforehand as well, but like some fringes, the attendance rate is a rough one.
Yes, especially for your first time.
Yes.
It's just like you have to, when you're, especially for like Adelaide or something, when like the flyering culture's there, when you're talking to someone, you have to be like that equal parts of, please, for the love of God, come to my show, but also it's good, I promise you. It's like, it's good, I back it.
I'm sweating and I look so desperate, but I promise I'm not like, I'm a little bit like this on stage, but still, please come and see it. I need this just now.
Yeah.
And it's also like, I don't know if you're anything like me, I hate flyering. I mean, I don't know anyone that likes it, obviously.
No, it's a means to an end.
It is, isn't it? So anybody that's not in the industry that's listening as well, I know people trying to give you flyers is annoying, especially in Edinburgh Fringe when you're just trying to walk up the Royal Mile.
Yep.
But those people are living and dying on every single interaction of you handing out a flyer. And sometimes if you're not given a flyer, maybe you're just not right for the show, or you are that one weird person that everyone's trying to avoid. So a little bit of self-reflection doesn't hurt as well.
And flying, it was the first time where Adelaide Fringe was the first one where I had to flyer for myself, because I like worked in marketing for festivals before, and I've been like, it's so one where I've realized like I'm so happy to flyer for other people.
I'm the same. I'm so happy to promote for other people. I'm so happy to build up other people.
Yeah.
As soon as it comes to me,
I'm like,
I'm a piece of shit. Come see my show, please.
Yeah, I'm like, please, maybe, I don't know.
Like, I can give you some good recommendations for other shows on at the same time if you want, and then maybe if they're sold out, I'll give you a comp. How about that?
Yeah. I've definitely I had a couple of moments in Adelaide where I was flyering and they were like, oh, we've already got a show at the time that your show is, but have you got another recommendation for a show later on? And
really?
And my eyes just lit up. I was like, great, I can spruik someone else's show and not my own. This is where I thrive.
Especially because in Adelaide, or for anyone that's not in the know, you get a thing called an artist pass, which means essentially you can go and see anyone else's show for free. So when you're not performing, and you got that little artist pass, you're going to see a lot of fucking shows.
You see so many. It's so good.
Yes. And obviously you can't see shows when your time slot is. Yeah. So you only know other shows when your time slot is not. So
that's my expertise in that festival.
Yeah, exactly. So hit up artists on the street. Maybe go and see their show as well.
Maybe.
You know, throw them a bone.
And please come see my show.
Or even better, buy a ticket, don't turn up.
Oh, yeah, I'll take your money. Yeah. I'll take it. I need it.
It's fully sell out an entire night. Nobody turned up. That way, they get, well, maybe that might fuck you up mentally.
It would be a mind fuck for sure. How about we decide on someone next Adelaide Fringe? You and I go halves.
Oh, okay.
Book out a show and just put like a hidden camera in their theatre just to see how they react.
Can we do this to? I would love to do this to some people I'm friends with because I feel like this is low-key bullying.
You sound like an awful friend, Sam.
I am a terrible. Well, if I buy your entire show out, I'd like to think I'm at least a couple of notches up from awful.
Yeah,
Not
true.
Yeah, but maybe some cool TikTok content.
Yeah.
Maybe. And also, I don't think I'm in any position to be buying out half of a theatre just now as well. So, yeah, any friends that are doing like a 5-seater next year, actually?
Yeah. Yep. I've got the budget for that.
I'll try to do 2.5 seats in that one. Nick and I'll go halves on that one. Yeah. How was your Adelaide run as well?
Yeah, it was really good in the end. I think it's one where, like, we were saying, like, I was... like just being out of home.
Yep.
I was there for like 3 weeks. And because I do photos and performing, it's like balancing both at the same time as well.
Yes.
So it's like a lot of my mates who are just performers like go do their show and then knock off and go to the artist bar afterwards. But a lot of the nights I'm like finishing my show and then running off to another show to take photos for the next couple of hours.
Which is a great way of seeing other shows, but also...
Oh, fantastic, yeah.
You're working, so you can't relax and enjoy it.
Yeah, I sometimes feel so bad when I'm in behind the lens, and especially like there are some times where I do like tech runs for people, so it's like
that happens a lot, huh?
And so it's just me and the performer, and it's like the most awkward show they're ever going to perform because I'm just go into my own little world when I'm behind the camera where I don't laugh.
No, of course not, because you're concentrating on work.
Yeah, and it's just like I know that the performer understands and gets it, but it's just... It cannot be fun. It cannot be fun for anyone.
I helped my friend and friend of the show, Paul Westbrook, video. He's also got a videography business as well. Yeah. So he's circus performer, one of those mad talented people, but also videos a lot of work. Yeah. And I was in Adelaide Fringe this year as well, so I helped him out with a lot of shows. And I just felt so weird sitting in the front row and never quite looking at the person because you're always just looking at a little square on your camera, trying to like track them on the video. And then like they'd shoot over to the audience to be like, and what do you, never mind. And what are you? I just like this little weirdo creep with my camera, and because Adelaide's so hot, I'm just sweating the entire time as well.
Oh my gosh, the heat waves in Adelaide.
Yeah, that almost killed me, I think.
Yeah.
You're just sitting, and these tents, like some of them are like 500 seaters as well. Aircon is not doing anything.
Nope.
And you're just sitting there sweating, recording all these amazingly talented performers, and I'm just like, well, this is where I am as a 35-year-old now then.
Yeah.
But again, I do quite enjoy doing it as well because you get to see so many more shows.
That's what I've loved about that's what I got into photography for. Like I started in bands, like back in the day.
Performing in bands?
No, because I have no music. Like, I have some musical talent where I can play music, but I can't write or be in bands. So it was just like I became music journalism is how I started, and then I got into music photography and doing that for free for a lot. Like back in Brisbane, in like 2016, it was just like every weekend shooting bands and that sort of stuff.
Because you've photographed, if that's the correct way of saying it, like some big artists. Hey, you got your Billie Eilishes, and other people that I can't remember the name of because I'm so out of touch with a lot of things.
Some of the biggest ones, like it's a few years ago, but like I was photographed for Sia, Gang of Youths, Splendor in the Grass. So some big festivals out there.
That's so cool
as well. So just part of that you get to photograph. Tame Impala is another big one that I've been able to photograph. So that's how I started into photography, and it was just simply because I wanted to be part of the action, and get to see these shows and get
just wanted that backstage pass.
Oh my gosh,
it's fine.
We do it for the lanyards, I reckon.
Yes.
When I first got my first lanyard with my name and photo on it, I'm like, I've made it. This is everything to me.
You're walking around, people just do that little glance down and you're like, yep, okay, and you walk through places. You get discounted food and beverages.
Oh my gosh, that half price drink.
Those coffees that only cost cost like $2 as well.
Hell yeah.
That's what I'm living for.
Oh my God, the £1 coffees that we were getting in Edinburgh. And it was a place that actually made good coffee in Edinburgh.
Which is an oxymoron, I think.
Yeah.
A good coffee in Scotland is impossible to get.
But to be fair, the barista was Australian, so
Yes,
that's how.
They're Australian or they're Kiwi. That's the only two ways you can get a good coffee in Scotland.
Yeah, the Kiwis actually do know what they're doing.
Yeah,
It's like sometimes I'm like, only Aussies know.
Yeah.
But when you head overseas, it's like, okay, the Kiwis have a thing or two up their
As long
sleeve.
as you're not British.
Yeah.
I'll take my chances. Maybe Americans kind of sometimes know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I wouldn't trust a person that grew up in Scotland. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
you're going to kill me with this coffee.
When I first got to Edinburgh, one of the first coffees I had, they asked me what coffee I wanted, and I said a flat white, and they just looked back and no, I asked for a latte, and they looked back at me and go, is that black or white coffee? And I was like, okay, this is the vibe.
I meant small or large. What are you talking about? But yeah, I do not miss that at all. And this is such, we've like, what is this? 10 minutes in now, we started talking about Melbourne coffee culture. God, I hate myself. I'm editing this all out.
I know who I am, and it's a coffee snob set.
Oh, yeah. Me too. And I hate myself for it as well, but I am who I am now.
Yeah, that's why I live in this city.
Yeah,
Like,
me too. I love Sydney so fucking much. I would live up there if, firstly, I had money, but secondly, like it was maybe a little bit more Melbourne-esque as far as the culture goes.
Yeah,
but like everyone up there is so happy. It's so sunny. Everyone's so attractive. They're all wearing their nice clothes. You come down to Melbourne and everyone's just wearing black all the time, and everyone's miserable because it's fucking raining.
layered up like crazy. Yeah.
Fuck, it's a nice city.
Oh, it's so nice.
Yeah, right.
I think it's I definitely moved here for this. I say this festival, the festival that just finished, Melbourne Comedy Festival.
Comedy Fest, yes.
Yeah, I moved here for that festival, and I think just the comedy scene here in general is just like makes everything worth it.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
It's so good.
And so many different kind of comedians as well that you'll see. Like, it's not just your like quote unquote like straight stand-ups like Seinfeld. It's your weird alternative ones or your musical comedians as well. I know this is I'm about to quote, or I'm about to say somebody from Sydney, but like friend of the show Cameron James, just saw him in Comedy Fest, and like musical comedies usually looked down upon so much as well, but I'm like, fuck, this is fucking great.
He's incredible. He's just
not the best example of a Melbourne comedian, admittedly.
No, but I think it's just like
Josh Earl, friend of the show. There you go. There's a Melbourne-based musical comedian.
And that's why, like, because I started gigging when I was in Brisbane. And it just wasn't
that? How is Brisbane?
Dude, it's getting better.
Okay.
But
I feel like people say that with almost every city. Like Perth, Tasmania. I know Tasmania is not a city. But like Perth, Tasmania, Brisbane, some places up north, they're like, it's getting better. And I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah, I think it's one, like, if you compare it to when I started gigging, which was like, my first gigs in Brisbane were like in 2013.
Wow.
So that's when I was a tiny little baby.
Yeah.
Because I gave up comedy for a long time, and that's possibly because of Brisbane.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, it was so cliquey and it was so dick joke. And it's just like, when I came to Melbourne and I started gigging again here like 2 years ago, it's just a different scene. Like I've been around it for a while, but it was just the time that Melbourne audiences have for performers. It's just, you don't need to be dick joke. They want to hear your story.
Yeah. And they
want something different.
Coming to see you rather than coming to see comedy, quote unquote. Yeah. And you're like, fuck, man, I'm talking like I'm a comedian myself, but this is just what I've seen. Yeah. All right, everyone. But yeah, like people are so much more open to it as well. And then you've got your individual nights and places as well. And you've got your like basement comedy.
And there's so many different rooms here, different styles of rooms. You have the alt rooms here. There's so many. That I don't even think there is an alternative room in Brisbane. There's like,
I didn't even know there was a comedy room in Brisbane, if I'm being honest with you.
Oh, there's I would like, there's the Sit Down Comedy Club, which is like the flagship one. I say flagship, it's the one that's been around the longest, but that's I don't want to slag it off or anything, but
because you're still trying to book gigs.
I got you. Actually, I have sent an email that they haven't responded to. So
okay, well, this is coming out a couple of days after we've recorded, so you can leave in this if you want, but if you have a few choice words for them,
I would just say that they're really good, and I think would love to be back sometime.
Nice save.
But I think it's just like they have the more stand-up TM audiences, whereas like then there's like Good Chat Comedy Club, which is like probably the more emerging established room, and that's like the biggest supporter of independent comedy in Brisbane. Sick. And so since that came about, I think there's a better scene there. Like the rooms there are much more open to different styles of comedy.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I love going back to there, because even though I do stand-up sort of stuff, I always describe my style as storytelling.
Yeah.
I love telling stories, and that's what my show was. It's like very much like not just set up punchline. It's very much like one long narrative.
Yeah.
And that's what I love to do.
It's not just a load of one-liners. And
yeah. Which I feel like I need an audience that has a bit more time, wants to go on a journey, a bit more okay with a bit more the vulnerable side of performing, which I love to be. I love to be vulnerable.
Oh man, some of these fucking shows where you go in and you're like, I'm just here to laugh, and they make you feel things. I'm like, how dare you? Yeah. I have come here to forget about all of my sadness. You've put your sadness on me as well now.
I just like wearing my heart on my sleeve, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And again, like so many different styles as well.
Yeah.
So it's so nice to have space for that.
Yeah, and that's what I think, that's why I love the Melbourne scene so much. Yeah. Space, I think, is the best descriptor for it, because it's just like, you put me in you put my show in a room with people who just want joke.
Yep.
And it becomes it just becomes a weird vibe.
Yes.
There's just dead silence.
I'm
trying to understand what I'm trying to do. They want to laugh, but they don't know how.
And when's this part end? When can we laugh? When are we allowed to?
Yeah. Whereas like if you get the more Melbourne audience that understand, I think I just say more Melbourne. I am generalizing. It's just like, that's why I'm still learning to just be like, this is what the show is. This is what I do. You'll laugh when you laugh, but like maybe you won't, and that's okay too.
Yeah. As long as you're fucking entertained.
Yeah.
Okay? As long as you give me a good review, whatever reviewers are in tonight.
Say something nice about me on a podcast. That's all I want.
Exactly, right? Yeah. 5 stars. Put that on your flyer.
Hell yeah.
So I usually have my go-to questions with our guests as well.
Yeah.
So comedians, it's always your corporates, your horrible bombs, your open mics, that kind of stuff. But I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't had too many photographers on, so I don't really have any of my go-to questions for photography.
Yeah.
So I'm quite interested to see if you've come with any photography-based stories as well.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm also very excited because you were mentioning this before the podcast, but you have worked at festivals behind the scenes as well, which I know, like, as being an artist myself, artists are a nightmare to deal with. So I'm quite excited to hear if you have anything. Yeah. You don't have to name artists, or even if you have anything artist-based in that respect. But I'm very excited to hear if you have anything. Do you have any particular way that you want to tell the stories, or you have groupings? I always like to ask the guests if they can leave the most salacious one till the end. So we keep everybody listening till the end.
Well, I definitely have a big one that I think is the one that we could like. I mean, I wrote my entire show, most recent festival show, about this one. Which is, I think, worth you keeping to the end.
Yeah, fuck yeah, let's do that.
But we can start with the photography one. I think there's more just not like one story in particular, but more just like talking out some of the shit that I deal with.
Yeah, it's just a career's worth of things which are like, that's not ideal.
And that's it. It's always, this just isn't ideal for anyone.
Well, especially with photography as well, because you're catching people so vulnerable, which, especially with certain types of photography as well, I've modeled quite a bit. Humble brag, I know.
Yeah, I was like, all right, show up.
I'll give you my lookbook after this. But like a lot of the time with that, like you're like, I've just met this person 5 minutes ago, and they can be taking pictures of you in quite revealing ways, or with little clothing on, and you're like, I feel a bit weird, but like I always feel a little bit bad for the photographer as well, and they've never made me feel uncomfortable, but I'm always like, this is a strange job, isn't it? Like a strange position to be put in.
And that's what I always find, like, it always is just, it's such an intimate, like the portrait, the studio, it's such an intimate experience for anyone.
And if you get somebody that's uncomfortable in front of a camera as well, because like models for the most part are comfortable in front of a camera, but if you're taking headshots for comedians, if you're taking
the most neurotic people you'll find,
if you're taking photos of musicians when they're like maybe just in a practice, so like you're the only person there, like what you were saying, doing the tech runs and stuff like that, people are like, do I look in the camera? Do I pretend like you're not there? Do I try and find my light? Like, what am I doing? Am I happy enough? I look so tired. Is this what it's going to look like in the end? Are you editing them? And a few of my insecurities.
I was just like, no, let it all out. I encourage it.
Again, this is my therapy.
Well, that's what it is. It's just like, it's so, I think comedians are the most interesting ones as well, because they, you just see them. I've just learned that like my job in the studio is like, I thought when going into it was going to be like 90% taking photos, 10% dealing with the people. Turns out it's the other way around. Yeah. And it's just like comedians, it's so interesting because you get such an inverse of like personalities from stage to studio.
Isn't it amazing? A lot of people see people on stage or on telly and they're like, this is them. Like, no, they're playing a character of themselves.
Yeah.
Just because they've not got a different name though.
And I just thought it was like, because for my stage persona, it's just like an elevated version of who I am, which is a very nervy boy. But there's these people who I've seen on stage who are the most confident, most like cocky, the crowd work comedians, come into my studio and then become the most nervous, most unsure, most self-doubting people.
Again, like who you're saying, neurotic and just like...
And you can just see it in their eyes, their smile, they're
those
just...
eyes, man, they'll fucking give you away every time.
There is no hiding the eyes.
Yeah.
And then the inverse, like sometimes there's one comedian who I just never like naming names, but there's one in particular that I always think about. She's like the most like nervous, weird, neurotic, like stage persona, like can never do crowd work, like, but then came into the studio and was just like so sure of what she wanted, and how to work her angles and get that, like how to bring that stage persona out behind the camera. And it was just so impressive to see someone who is so like quote nervy, but to be so confident in that nerves. It was actually quite inspiring because like my persona is quite a nervy boy, and it's just like when I get in front of the camera, which is not often, I'm like, how do I be that version of myself in this moment? Whereas she was just like, nope, I know exactly what I want. I don't need direction, but like we can go
awesome
together
as well.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, you don't have to work on it a lot. How do you tend to find dealing with people that are like so nervous or like, I don't know what to do? Like, do you have ways of, I don't want to say coaching them, but like obviously you're helping them as well.
Yeah.
Or you just like, look, man, I'm just here to take photos.
No, I have this one trick that is always a fun one to start with. If someone's coming in that is like quite nervy, doesn't really, has never done it before, especially if they're a comedian, I get them to do a 5-minute set for me in front of the camera, because it is a horrible, horrible, horrible experience that anything after for the next hour is going to be more comfortable.
And I like that.
And it's just acknowledging that this is an awful experience. Because, and then it gives me especially if I haven't seen them on stage before, it shows me how they deliver, who they are. And then I try and capture that again for the rest of the hour.
Do you laugh during the 5 minutes?
I do for that one. I pay less attention to the camera in that one because I know that they need it.
Yes.
They need laughs in that moment more than they need photos. So I do give them feedback, but I do make it a weird experience, so it's awful.
Is this bullying as well now?
It is a mind trick. It's not. It's psychology. Not one that I'm proud of. I suppose that
if it works,
it works, and that's the thing. It's something that I've learned along the way that definitely works. And
I guarantee you, that's not the worst gig they've ever done, is
No, definitely not. I'm sure they've done Adelaide Fringe before.
We've all done Adelaide Fringe before. Which again, I love Adelaide and I love Adelaide Fringe.
Yeah.
But boy, you can get some off nights there.
And that's it. It's just like, I mean, any festival you're going to have off nights, but for me, like just in out-of-towner, it's just like the worst nights in Adelaide or in an out-of-town is far worse, like just the worst of the worst. It's just because you can't even just go home to your own bed.
And you can't escape it because Adelaide is Fringe at that time. At least in Melbourne, if it's like Comedy Festival or Fringe, you're like, well, it's still Melbourne. There's still a million things to do here. Sydney or even Edinburgh, I suppose. But like Adelaide, they're like, no, just Fringe. Fringe is everywhere. No matter where you look, there's posters on the streets, like literally on the pavements, there's posters. You can't escape this. You're horrible at your job. Go home and cry now.
Oh my gosh, those moments where I'm like, there was one night in Adelaide this year where I had just a god awful show. One where you walk away going like, should I be doing this? Like, why am I? And then I had to go photograph a show that like of a friend of mine who just sold out the show and fucking crushed it. And it's just so like,
dare they?
And that's like, inescapable. It's just like, I just have to sit through watching someone in like high definition do so much better than me.
And you can't look away as well. No. You're there, you're honed in watching it, like both first person and third third person
Yeah.
view. God, that's brutal.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
I mean, great for them.
Oh no, it's like great for them for sure, but it's
rough for
just,
you.
It's just such a weird experience
Yeah.
to be like. It's not even hating myself. It's just you cannot help but compare yourself when you go straight from one to the other with no buffer between. There's no cry in between.
No, right?
There's no like beer or a pint or something. No debrief with
a friend or
something.
Else that's had a terrible night. You've literally just gone from the two extremes of Adelaide Fringe.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
And I just, there's no like buffer in my head for that. It's the whiplash of that is just a very visceral experience.
But again, that's what everybody gets to do at a Fringe.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily the photography part of it, but like everybody gets to experience that in one way or another.
Yeah. And it's always like part of the process.
Yeah.
It's like it makes you stronger.
Exactly.
And I think going to see my mate crush it so hard, be like, he's done Fringes for a few years. So it's just like, I know that there's a reason why, but and maybe seeing him do that makes it achievable in my head.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's all part of the process.
Exactly. That's it, isn't it? Like you take your first, hopefully not a few years, but maybe a few years of like, why am I doing this? Into getting there. And then you're like, okay, this is something I'm looking forward to maybe even now.
Yeah.
Or something that is financially doable.
Well, that's why I do for photos, to make any Fringe financially viable.
Very smart, honestly. Very smart. And with the photography work as well, is there any other awkward or embarrassing stuff that we were wanting to bring up? Otherwise, I'm happy to delve into the comedy world.
Well, it's just more like I feel like you can't talk about photos in a studio and not bring up nudity.
Yes. Okay, cool. So I was going to ask about this. I don't know why I was so excited by that. I'll rescind that excitement.
A lot about you as a person, Seb.
What? Yes.
We get to talk about nipples.
I didn't even know that when I booked you for the podcast, Nick, but I am so excited right now. No, but like it is one of those things as well, because it's like depending on the studio as well. And I don't know if you've ever been in front of the camera in this respect. I have. I've done a little bit of nude photography work as well. But I'm always like, what happens if someone's going to burst through the door? What happens if all the doors blow open and they can see me from the streets and then I get arrested for indecent exposure? Again, this might just be my neurosis.
Yeah.
But it's such a weird thing.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, are you feeling awkward as well? I know like you probably try not to show if you are, but...
And I think that's what the awkward moment is. Like it's the finding the balance between how awkward do I feel versus how much I'm allowed to show, because you can't be too okay with it.
You can't be excited like I was when you brought it up.
Truly, like if someone like gets like takes their top off or something and you show excitement, you are part of the problem.
Well, I don't want to speak ill of any photographers, but there's a few photographers out there which I think might be the only reason why they're in photography is for that reason.
Yeah, definitely part. And I mean, photographers don't have a great reputation, I think, in those aspects sometimes.
Yeah, look, it's a spectrum of people that work in photography, but you can usually tell the kind of person that's wanting to do that kind of photography because they've got a full-time job working as an accountant, they've got a wife and kids, and all their photography is just very bad nude photography.
Yeah, a lot of black and whites for some reason.
Black and whites, autofocus.
Yeah.
They were like, I've got a Sony something. And you're like, okay, cool.
Sure.
Yeah. What?
But I think that's one of the reasons why I get some of the few more awkward ones as well, because I think I have a reputation on the scene for being a very good boy.
A good boy. Is that BOI as well?
I'm more of a BOI, I think, is how I'm a good boy.
Good boy.
And it's like I think I've had some of the weird ones. Like I've done one shoot comes to mind where just thinking about how to phrase it. It's a very tit heavy show.
Okay.
And I feel like if she's listening to this show, she knows exactly who I'm talking about.
Okay, cool.
Because she just walks into the studio and it was just like, we know each other, we're friends, but I didn't get a heads up before the shoot. But she was just like, Nick, there's going to be a lot of tits today. And I was just like, okay. She's like, yeah, my show's going to be very tit heavy.
So when I ask, and I do feel awkward asking these questions now as well myself.
No.
When it was tit heavy, is there a lot of tits or just one pair of tits a lot?
It was one pair of tits a lot.
Okay.
And it was because it's like we were trying to obviously it's a poster shoot.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out, because she wanted it as sexy as possible without tit.
Yeah, you still need without nipple maybe.
Without
it still
nipple,
needs to be able to be published.
Yeah. So it was just like it kept it just like shuffling around, things falling out, and it's just like it was just a very awkward moment because it was just like I don't know where to look.
Yes,
because I'm just so conscious of how creepy photographers are.
Well, that's it as well, because then you're getting into your own head.
Yeah,
and you're like, am I making myself more creepy because of the creeps?
Yeah,
like is this like a self-fulfilling prophecy? Yeah, like what is this?
And so it's like and I need to be looking straight at them to figure out like what looks good, and what like whether we can use it or not, because she's like trying to pose, like look up in the distance, but then also like act with her boobs. So like I'm trying to direct her boobs, while she's like posing with her face. So it was just it was just like it was the first one where I'm like, I don't know the enthusiasm I should be having right now.
Because a lot of the time, and some of the great photographers I've worked with as well, are like, this is an amazing shot. Like, look how beautiful you are here. Look how good this shot is. But then I'd imagine in that situation, kind of like, look at your fucking tits, man.
How great are your tits?
No nip in this one. Yeah, fuck yeah.
So, and it was, luckily we were mates.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say,
so I've had a few other ones since then that had not like nudity, but just people wanting a more salacious look, whereas like just braless but with like a coat over or something. So like
a covering,
nipples will come out every now and again. So I think if I started with like the more of the strangers, it would have been like proper, like I'm not comfortable with this.
Yeah, I have made myself a creep by how uncomfortable I am.
But luckily we started with this one. And it was also a very good show. It also is like I just feel like people will know this show if they've seen the show, the one I'm talking about, because it was the tit show of the festival.
Was it again? We don't have to answer these questions. No. Was it the recent festival?
Most recent festival.
Yeah. All right. So anyone that went to see tit heavy shows, write in. I'm interested to see who this is. Again, that came out wrong. I'm not in.
Or maybe you're the problem, Seb.
I am the problem. Again, this feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm trying not to be the problem, and I've made myself the problem now. But yeah, it's also like, it's nice that you're comfortable with your friends in that respect as well.
And nice that like she was comfortable, like felt comfortable around me to do that. Because like I have a lot of people like change clothes and that sort of stuff in the studio, and it's just that it's always that like. I leave the room, of course, but some people just drop their dacks in front of me because or take their bra off in front of me because they just trust me, I guess.
I'm bad for that.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Yeah. Like I'm very conscious of it now. I'll never change underwear in front of someone.
Yeah.
But like I'll strip down to my jocks, just be like, I'll just quickly change. And people are like, oh, okay. And I'm like, oh, fuck, sorry. Just as a performer, you're broken inside for a start, but also your brain doesn't work properly. And as a stunt performer, especially, I've got brain damage. That's my excuse for everything. All right, guys, that's everything that happened in the past 10 minutes on this podcast is brain damage. But so like I do kind of forget how, because especially like in theater as well, like you've got quick changes sometimes where you're just stripping off behind stage and like people are running past you and stuff. So I can understand that it's a weird thing for people to see, and I think I'd be more uncomfortable watching somebody change in front of me than changing in front of people as well.
I think for me, it's always the surprise of like, sometimes I've just turned around and they're like just in their underwear. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, I thought we were just doing headshots. I'm sorry.
What have I signed up myself for?
No name and shame those people. How dare they?
But I think it's just like, but since then I've just become desensitized to it as well. So it's just like I have to overcheck what they're comfortable with as well, of like sometimes I forget to leave the room and I'm like, oh no, I should leave the room. And
again, like this is all like I feel like we're pushing ourselves back into the creepy areas here again. But like it is just something you get desensitized with, and especially I got a lot of friends that work in like the adult industry or the burlesque industry, and they're just so open and free with their bodies. And then I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I've just been chatting to you for the past 5 minutes and you're topless. I am like, I didn't like they're very forward and fine with it. But like, again, it's not one of those things where I'm like, no, you work in that industry. You should be fine with me talking to you like this. It's never that kind of thing. And like, it's nice having, especially on sets and films and stuff. I say this every week, but like having intimacy coordinator and stuff now is so welcome.
I've only just learned intimacy coordinators are a thing, and it excited me so much. Like, of course it's a thing. I'm so glad it is a thing, but it just is like wow, like that's. I'm so glad that exists.
It is so fucking welcome.
Yeah,
it is so upsetting that there's still not a massive pushback, but people are like, oh, why do we need to get that person on this? And I'm like, all right, you go and like pretend to fillet someone that you've never met before in front of a room of people. Like, it's not easy. It's not like something that should just be assumed because it's in a script.
Yeah,
is that coming into the photography world now as well?
Not that I've experienced, but also I'm very like self-managed.
Yep.
Like I don't do like big production shoots or anything.
Different with that respect as well, I feel like, because there's a lot of the time people aren't being like, unless you're hiring people for that specific reason, but it's people hiring you to take photographs of them. So it's a little bit more self-managed in that respect.
And anytime I haven't done anything that like two people in an intimate situation. Yeah. But I've done like those not nudes, but like nude, not nude shoots. They always have brought a director with them or something as well. Well, some of the more salacious ones, they've brought directors, and they're like, I guess they're the faux intimacy coordinator, being like, they're the one who understands the performer more than I do. Yeah. And will be able to like make them be sexy and have more of a, just a more personal relationship with them, know them better. So I don't have to say the phrases like, push your bra up more, or like give me more like give me bedroom eyes. I think there's just like those sort of things. Have you ever
said that before?
Can you tell that I've never said that before?
No, I saw I know no one else is in this room just now, but the discomfort in your eyes when you were saying that.
I was raised Catholic, and it is still palpable in me.
It's like, because you wanted to be a priest for a little while as well, didn't you?
Oh my God, how did you know that?
I've done my research, mate. All right.
Fucking hell.
I'm just some fly-by-night weird podcaster.
Who told you that?
I found it in an interview.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So going from wanting to be a priest to directing tits, it's quite, again, different ends of the spectrum, I would say.
Yeah, my parents would not be proud. Nor would Father Michael. I'm so sorry.
Well, I don't know if Father Michael's listening to this, but apologies, I suppose.
Nah, he's done enough.
Oh dear. Well, we'll swiftly move on from that thing.
But no, how did that come up? I'm so like shocked that you knew that. It feels like not something I talk about that often.
I said this. I always say this as well. Like, peek behind the curtain for the podcast. That this isn't got you journalism. I'm not here to make people like uncomfortable or mention names or any stories they don't want to. So I feel like I've sprung that on you now and put you a little bit on the back foot. So I apologize.
No, it's more just like, I think I'm at a stage in my career where it's like, I just assume no one has any idea about anything I've ever done.
Aww.
So anytime someone brings up something like from a gig that I've done or a show that I've done, or maybe it's just something I've done along the way, I'm like, oh, you know something about something I've done.
I'm out there on the internet. Oh,
yeah. It's strange when that happens.
I've used it for good in this case.
Yes.
But people out there, if you're listening, you can use it for evil. So
yeah, go off.
But sorry, with the photography work, I love hearing about that. But we might move on to the stand-up now, if that's all right with you. Yeah. So you're saying you're a little bit earlier in your career, obviously having started off in Brisbane, but then restarting back down in Melbourne as well? Yeah, awesome. How are your experiences with the open mics? Have we been hired out for any corporate gigs yet?
Yeah, look, there was one, it is the one that comes to mind of like just truly the most harrowing experience I've ever done in my entire life.
Because I want to say this before we say the story. I thank you for everybody that shares these kind of stories, because I am bringing up so much past trauma, which we all, in a very healthy way, push down as, again, Catholic upbringing. So you push it down as deep down as you can.
Bottle it up.
It kills you at around about 65.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sorry for you having to bring this back up again.
No, I think it's healing, as you say. It's therapy.
Yes, exactly. And you throw it out into the world, and then you're like, okay, it's someone else's burden.
So my story in terms of like stand up, it's like I started gigging, like my first gig was when I was 14 years old, which is far too young.
Far too old.
I think every toddler should be doing comedy.
If you're 8 o'clock, if you're 8 years old, sorry, I don't know, English second language. If you're 8 years old and you don't have 200,000 followers on TikTok for your comedy, give up.
Yeah,
honestly.
give up.
Yeah.
So I started when I was 14 via the Melbourne Comedy Festival's Class Clown competition.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I was one of those comedy nerds that were like, I can do comedy as a 14-year-old. Let's go.
Wow. How was your first set?
It was fine.
For a 14-year-old, I don't know how you cannot be like fine. Like,
yeah.
if you say great, firstly, probably wouldn't believe you.
Yeah.
But secondly, if you're like terrible, and I'm like, yeah, fair enough.
Fair
honestly.
enough. And it's just like, I think maybe it was good because it's just like, for a 14-year-old boy in Queensland doing comedy, I didn't say anything cooked or anything weird. It was just
How many slurs did you use?
None. I'm so proud of myself.
Great. Big tick from me there, Nick.
I think my set was about... What I can remember is my set being about if David Attenborough did a documentary on redheads.
Yeah, right.
So it was very self-deprecating, which is like my genre of comedy, very self-deprecating. So like I started when I was really young and then I gigged in Brisbane and just had a bad time of like not finding my place. It was very cliquey. So I gave up, for lack of a better term, moved to Melbourne, started working in the industry, and then about 8 years later, in 2022, started gigging again.
Ooh, post-COVID gig.
Yeah. So like we all had the identity check when we the crisis perhaps during lockdown.
A little bit more applicable, that word.
Yeah.
We're going to continue recording. I just need to plug in my recorder.
Oh yeah.
But please keep talking.
Keep talking?
Yeah.
Cool. So I started gigging in 2022. And then someone booked me for a gig because I think they were just like, oh, you've been gigging for a while.
Is that because you said you've been gigging since you were 14?
I think they learned that.
The way I learned that you wanted to be a priest?
Yeah.
Openly on the internet?
Yes. They learned it and there was a mate of mine, they were all booked for a gig together.
Okay.
And so
a mate of yours that's also in the comedy world?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So he was just like, maybe like just like throwing me a bone as well, like giving me some cash and like some experience and that sort of stuff.
It's usually appreciated as well,
Which
right?
is, and that's why I took the gig, because I was like, I'm so thankful for it. I'm not going to turn it down.
Yeah, right. Money as well in the comedy world,
I know,
in the arts world,
and $200. So it's just like that is a decent amount for like at my level, that sort of stuff.
And especially like when you're starting out, losing money is par for the course usually.
Totally,
well.
It's like an investment. We say,
right?
like a TAFE course or something. Like you're gonna pay to practically do.
Yeah, exactly, right.
So I did this gig, and when I say the name of this gig, you're going to understand why it was so awful.
Oh, I'm excited.
Because it was...
Sorry, again, I'm not excited for what happened. I'm excited to hear the story.
I feel like you're just going to understand immediately. It was a gig for the Great Australian Bike Ride in Colac.
Okay, right. Now, bike ride. Are we talking bikies or bicycles?
We're talking like bicycles, like pushies. Like we're talking like a whole group of maybe like 2,000 people who take 2 weeks out of their life every year to bike ride, cycle, like hundreds of kilometers across Victoria.
I don't love this, Nick.
No.
I don't love this at all. I'm sorry for any of our mammals listening, but...
Like, I'm like, go off to whoever wants to do that. I cycle myself. I like to cycle, but maybe no more than like an hour at a time. These people cycled like 8 hours in this one day from one stop to the next, and then had to sit through 4 stand-up comedians.
Oh my God, so it was directly after they'd cycled an entire day?
After they cycled the entire day. So they have this like moving tent site where someone packs up this site, drives however many hours, sets the tent site up for them to bike ride to, and then entertainment happens every night at these pop-up tent sites. Which is not, it doesn't scream stand-up comedy, does it? Well, this environment.
There's so many things wrong here. For a start, after that long, surely you just want to sit down, drink some water, have some food, and go to bed.
Yes.
Not sit in silence. And listen to 4 comedians.
And Seb, you have no idea how accurate that sit in silence is.
Oh dear.
Because it was just like, because that was the whole vibe of this thing. And they were just like so tired. Most of them are retired as well. So they're like tired anyway.
Yes.
And then they have to cycle 8 hours every day. They don't want to be there. They just want to have food and go to bed.
Of course.
Probably watch some TV.
Yeah.
So instead of TV, they had 4 stand-up comedians.
And again, like if you were saying they're more of the retired demographic, you're not Dave Hughes.
I'm not what they
Dave
want.
O'Neill.
No.
You're not any of the famous Daves.
They haven't heard. I'm not one of the 3 names they've heard of before.
Yes, exactly.
So they're just not going to be into it. Like it would be like they were, I think, okay with me being there.
That's nice.
But that's the best I've got.
Look, I've heard a lot worse, mainly footy club gigs from almost every stand-up comedian I've had on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I've never had a bicycle stand-up gig.
Yeah.
A bike event stand-up gig. That is so bizarre.
And it's just like, because it's a setup, like a traveling circus type vibe. So it's just like, the stage was I want to say 20 meters away from where the first audience member was.
That is so far.
It is so far. Like, and then, the gig wasn't run in the best way either. So there was like
you don't say, Nick. You don't say.
I mean, even the run of the show. So it was like there was 4 of us. There was an MC who brought on the first act who did 20 minutes.
Right.
Which is a long set to keep any sort of momentum up. And then we had a break.
Okay.
And that break was the first chance this audience got to leave. And they left. So when I got up to open the second bracket, there was maybe like half the amount, maybe a quarter of the amount left. Okay. So like what started as like maybe 1,000 people. That's too many people.
That's
maybe like 500 people. I think there was like 1,000 at this whole event. Yeah. 500 attended this. And then like 200, maybe 200 left behind. But they were so spread out as well.
All you see is the empty seats.
All the empty seats in the world that were so far away from me that it was just like... The real cherry on the whole situation, though, was the fact that we had to drive home from Colac, which is like, 3 hours away from Melbourne?
Yeah, I don't even know if I've been before, but yeah, it would be.
Don't go.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I wasn't planning on. No offense to anyone in Colac.
I'm sure it's fine if you live there, but it's just like, I don't think there's anything to go there for other than to like pass through.
I was going to say this bike ride.
Yes.
Or stand-up comedy, maybe.
Yeah, in a tent. And so we had to draw, like, this was the most silent 3-hour car ride I've ever been in. Yeah. Just the 3 of us. So one drove themselves, and there was the 3 remaining comics that just carpooled. And I don't think a word was said the whole way home.
Yeah.
It was just, harrowing is that word that I'd use.
How long did you have to perform for?
So 20 minutes.
So 20 minutes each. So all 4 of you did 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That is so long.
It is so long to be hated for.
That is very true.
Yeah.
That is so long in general.
Yeah.
Like post-event, post-8-hour bike ride, that is 5 minutes each, maybe at most.
Yeah, you need something very quick to keep people's attention. But also, like I've also never gigged in front of so many people, like drinking tea before.
At nighttime, I didn't even think about that.
They were just dipping their teas, like having a sip. Wow. Like I was essentially, it was that thing we were talking about. I'm not sure before or after we started recording, but that. Like, I could have been there or not there, and they would have felt the exact same thing.
They're just happy to sit down.
They just wanted to sit down and stare into the abyss for a while after 8 hours of bike riding.
I'm not surprised. That is so long, and that is such a... So I'm going to presume you only did one night of this as well.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Okay, cool. You didn't follow them around every night.
Oh, God, imagine. No.
That would be almost funnier, I think.
They have, like, I think we were the stand-up, we were the comedy night.
Yep.
So they do, like, different entertainment each night.
What else are they doing?
I heard that there were bands one other night.
Bands
which
makes sense.
Because you don't have to give anything for a band except a clap at the end.
And you can sit and chat or fall asleep.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit in silence.
I think musicians, like, people are just... bit more like they are there rather than...
That's the ambiance rather than it's a show.
Yeah, and especially the type of bands I think they would get for this Great Australian Bike Ride.
For sure, right? Tom Jones cover band.
Yeah. But, oh my gosh, it was just like... So me and the mates that I went with, it happened on December 2nd, and we had an anniversary a year afterwards of being like, we've survived another year.
Never forget.
Never forget. That's our Remembrance Day.
Oh, it's like, you guys all like join hands in silence.
Yeah, 1 minute silence for all the jokes that fell that day.
Oh, I thought you meant for every joke that fell. I was like, that's a long silence. But yeah, no, that's it's unfortunate, but I will say getting paid for it isn't too bad, because that could have been a free gig.
Totally. And I think that's the only saving grace. The only silver lining of it all, of just like, at least there was that paid for the drinks afterwards.
Yeah, right? Or like maybe up until that point as well, it's like, this might be the most I've ever made from one gig as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So if there's any bike riders, any bike festivals, no motorcycles, thank you. Only bicycles. Yeah. Hit Nick up after the show.
Please don't.
We'll drop.
I don't. I think this is the last time I want to remember it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, it depends how much you're offering.
But there was it's one that like we didn't get asked back for the gig after that, which is fair enough.
Yeah, unsurprising if I'm being honest.
But I brought it up because it's been like just sometimes you debrief with other comics about the worst gigs and that sort of stuff. And you're like, sometimes when you have a bad show, you're just like, at least it wasn't bad as that one time.
And you have your callback to the worst gig now as well. So that's nice.
And it is like, I think that is genuinely the worst one. Unless the only way I think I will have a worse gigs, and maybe it will happen, but it will be that active heckling of like, get out of here, fuck off.
Yeah. Which somebody throws a drink on you.
Very fortunate I've not had
yet.
Joking
as well. Yeah. Please do not turn up to Nick's shows and do that. That is a joke. Disclaimer, that is a joke.
Hey, it would be better than nothing, I guess. I love audience feedback. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm trying to salvage.
See if we want to save that part in the podcast. But yeah, no, that is fair enough.
Yeah.
But so you were saying that you were talking to people about that. Did anyone else get asked to do it again in years after?
Well, yeah, I brought it up to someone because it was during Comedy Festival this year. So like a couple of weeks ago, where I was last like, had a bad show last night, but yada, yada, yada. At least it wasn't as bad as that bike ride gig.
Yep.
And they just held me by my hand and they were just like, the Great Victorian Bike Ride. And I was like, and she was just like, I did it the other month. And I was just like, it was the worst thing ever. And she was like, it was the worst thing ever.
They still doing comedy.
Why didn't they learn from our mistake of like,
obviously, why are they still doing that?
Why? It makes no sense. And she was just like, yeah, we just like had an everyone had an awful time. Like they didn't want us there. They didn't want to be there. We didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Who is this for?
Who is it for?
I just think
the organizer.
It must be for or maybe the organizer just has too many nights to fill, where it's just like maybe they've done it before, where it's just like I don't know, maybe it goes on forever, this bike ride. Like they are going for like 2 weeks or something.
I suppose there's only like, we can get musicians.
Yeah.
Maybe some circus performers, maybe.
Yeah.
But who else? You're not getting burlesque acts.
No.
For that and demographic.
And
like,
who
else would you get? Yeah.
And their budgets get people at our level.
Yeah.
They're not getting Dave Hughes.
Yeah, of course.
So it's just... I don't know. Godspeed to whoever does it this year.
Just a warning as well.
This is a warning. If you're approached by the Great Victorian Bike Ride for comedy,
let's see how much they're paying first off. I don't know if you're listening. Great Victorian Bike Ride. I mean, I'm not a comedian, but if you pay me enough, I'll come up and just say some stuff on stage.
What would be your set for the Great Victorian Bike? Maybe I should write more bike-related gear. Maybe that's what my problem is.
I went to go and see a show, although admittedly it was not in a positive light for bicycle riders, but I think friend of the show, Nina Oyama, did a part on cyclists.
Yeah.
But again, not in a positive light. So, maybe if you're listening, hit up Nina Oyama. But again, I don't think... if you don't want a lot of very angry people maybe don't hit them up as well.
Yeah.
But did you have any other memorable comedy moments as well? Otherwise, I'm very excited to hear about working at festivals.
I think if just time wise, how long?
Oh, look, we are as long as you want to go, but we can start wrapping it up as well if you like.
Just maybe for the room itself.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
Let's move on to that salacious story to finish off with in that case.
Yeah. So I think it's the big one. It's like the most like obvious. When you first mentioned this, I was like, well, I can't do this and not bring up the time.
Again, I'm not happy that this happened. I love hearing these stories because some people come in and are like, this was a given. Like I could not tell this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went over to work for Edinburgh Fringe, a festival Fringe in 2017. And I got deported from Scotland.
What?
Yeah.
What?
So, which is what my whole festival show that I've been touring at the moment is about. Leave to enter.
Leave to enter, that's it, sorry, yep.
So I feel like it's just one of those things, like, of course I'm going to bring that up. And so, I was just...
deported is such, like, I hear that word as well, and I'm like, some shit went down.
It was just, like, the most out of my control process to happen, where it's just like, they're just like, you can't come into this country, you need to go home.
Wow.
And just like having my passport seized, fingerprints taken, escorted my way home.
Are we legally? Are they still looking for you? I have to report this back to my home country, I'm afraid, Nick.
No, it's I talk about the heavy parts of the time. I think it's very funny seeing someone with this red hair and my last name being deported from Scotland.
Yeah.
Very funny.
We should be welcoming you with open
I know.
arms.
They were one of us. But yeah, it was I was going over to work for the Edinburgh Fringe, and it was just like because they do the Fringe permits, which maybe you haven't dealt with.
I personally don't have to, but I've heard of them before. But if perhaps for the listeners, if you wanted to quickly run through that.
So it's like a visa not visa thing. Yep. So it's where workers on people who are performing or people who are working directly on shows or that sort of stuff can go over to the UK and work for the month.
Yeah, nice.
So I was heading over on that permit, and they told me at the border that I've been given the wrong information from my employer, and this permit doesn't apply to my job, so they can't let me into this country.
What?
So, and because of if you are refused entry, refused leave to enter, the UK, they have to send you back to the last place you came from.
Where did you come from?
Melbourne.
What?
So it was just like
so far,
and I was just like, but like I'm allowed to like enter the UK on a holiday visa, being Australian, and they were like, yeah, but nah. I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
I presume it was a little bit more jargon than that. Yes, for an abridged version,
nah. And then I was like, what about if I go to like Ireland or like Italy or something, and they're like, we can't let you go anywhere other than
literally have to handcuff you and put you on the next plane to Melbourne.
So that's what they took my passport, so I couldn't do anything, and then I just had to wait. I had one night in Edinburgh because that's when the next flight to Melbourne arrived.
So you had one night in Edinburgh, like under guard?
No, so I was allowed to use the accommodation I'd booked, but they had make sure that I'd checked in, and they said, and I quote, they will monitor me.
What does that entail?
I don't know if they bugged my bag or something like that.
In the room.
Yeah. But then it was like the full on process of like They just deemed me a criminal. They like made sure not followed me, but they called my called my accommodation, make sure I checked in. Then they had a rendezvous time the next morning. I had an officer assigned to me. Also, the detention when I arrived at the airport was for 10 hours.
Jesus.
So I'm talking I lost count of the amount of interviews that I had, the amount of times I was waiting. There was just so many phone calls to different people, trying to align stories that didn't work out.
Oh my God.
So it was this full on process. But it made for a very awkward situation.
Well, I mean, I don't know anyone that's been deported from a country before. I don't think, not certainly that anyone's admitted to publicly.
Yeah.
And especially from what seems like someone else's mistake.
Yeah, well, that was a saving grace of it for me at all. So it was just because the Home Office declared that it wasn't my intention.
Yeah.
That I was operating under false information.
Okay.
That it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
So I just had to be sent home. If it was my intention to enter illegally, then I would have been barred for the country for 5 years.
Oh my God. Holy shit.
So
wait, did you have to pay for your flight back home?
yes and no.
Oh.
So I'd booked a return flight that they just changed. So like technically, yes, I paid for that flight and I couldn't they just sent me home, I think. To be honest, there were a few other things going through my head at that time where I didn't really question who's paying for this second flight. I just went into autopilot, I think, of just shutting everything out, playing a lot of Candy Crush.
You need those games sometimes.
I do need escapism.
Yes. Oh, that would have been so stressful as well. Did you go back into the country to work that festival?
Yeah, so and that's the whole thing. So because I was able to, all it was is that I had to be sent home. That as soon as I got home, I had a day of curling my tail up underneath. What's the phrase? I cried for a day.
Yes, no, that sounds like about right, to be honest with you.
Yeah, to just recoup, I guess. And then the next day I applied for another visa, then started the motions on that, and ended up going back a few weeks later.
Okay.
Got to do the Fringe.
Okay.
Lived there for a little bit, went back again to live for a bit longer as well, and did another Fringe the following year.
Did you have to pay for another round trip?
Yeah.
That's not cheap.
I got some support from some people, but yeah, it wasn't cheap. So it was a very expensive. And luckily, I was going over there for a paid job. The employer that I was working for ended up paying for my accommodation as well.
Oh, good.
So there was got help along the way to get back.
Oh my God,
which is But it was just such a full on thing. It was just and that's why the show that I've been doing, it's been full on in that sense of the harder details are quite full on, but it's a very funny story. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's nice to be able to find the comedy in the tragedy as well,
and that's what the show's about. Sort of finding all the irony of the fuckness. I think, which is
I don't understand anything about legalities of leaving and entering countries, but it'd be weird to make you go back to Melbourne, whereas it's so easy just to get a ferry, a plane to France, Ireland, literally anywhere in Europe.
It was just and that's what I sort of realized of how process driven all this stuff is, and it's just some of these people that was talking that were the monitoring me and that sort of stuff, they were just this is what we have to do. This is just this has happened, therefore this needs to happen, therefore this needs to happen.
Ticking boxes, red tape. Oh
yeah, and that's things the passport being seized, my fingerprints being taken. They obviously knew I'm not trying to bring any malice to this country. Yep. I haven't done anything severely bad to someone. So it's just there's this 22-year-old boy that's just being bounced around this legal system and had to be sent home.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was quite full on. But I mean, I now have quite the reputation in Edinburgh. The people that I ended up working for referred to me as the visa guy for quite some time.
That's not the coolest nickname, if I'm being honest with you.
It isn't, but it's not the worst nickname I've been given in my life.
The visa guy is again, I can't remember whether we said this before or after, or before or after we started recording. But it's one of those mediocre nicknames. I'd rather not a terrible nickname. I'd rather a great nickname. But the terrible ones, you're at least there's a story with this. Presumably, those mediocre ones, you're it's just an upsetting story.
Yeah, we don't need to go into it.
Yeah.
I have a guy I know, and I'm obsessed with this guy. His name is Scorpo. His nickname is Scorpo.
Okay.
Not his real name.
Okay.
It's short for Scorpion. Because one time, and I wasn't even part of this conversation, but the conversation has become so famous in the friend circle that they tell everyone. It's just it was this, they were at school and they were had the conversation of if you could give yourself a nickname, what would you give it? And everyone was going, I don't really know. And then they turned they were, Angus, if you could give yourself a nickname, what would it? And he was just like Scorpion. Just like didn't skip a beat. He was like Scorpion. And then he just became his nickname.
So he gave himself
a fucking nickname. I'm so impressed by that.
That's the unicorn. That's the exception to the rule. That never happened.
No, and I'm just like, it's such a cool thing because I've never been able to give myself a good nickname.
No,
or
I've always
any
had
nickname.
terrible nicknames.
Yeah, like the Visa guy.
Visa guy, yeah. I'll tell this story and we'll finish on this, I promise.
Yeah.
But this is not an awful story. This is awful in my respect. In my final year of high school, I got called the Cabbage Patch Kid quite a lot.
Incredible.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, actually, do you have any guesses why that might have been?
You were naked in a field one day.
I fingered a girl in a cabbage patch.
Well done.
Thank you. And that was what it's in my yearbook as well.
In a cabbage patch?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a cabbage patch before.
I grew up in the countryside. I grew up in a farm.
That makes more sense. Yeah, my equivalent is like sugarcane farm or something.
Yeah, there you
Queensland.
go. But there's no sugarcane kids.
No, nor should there.
No, I don't think so. I think that sounds almost problematic. And I think on that story, sorry to the Visa guy and the Cabbage Patch Kids, I think we should finish on that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you so much for having me.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. Where can people find you? What have you got coming up? Any social links that you want to drop as well?
I've finished my run of shows at the moment, but I'm sure that there'll be things popping up soon. I'm like writing new shows for next year, that sort of stuff. So maybe doing a lot of photo work. So if you want to see me do comedy or me take your photo, you can find me at Nick McPics on Instagram.
And you got a little website as well of the same name? nickmcpics.com.au?
I think it's just .com.
.com. It'll be in the show notes.
Yeah.
So whatever it is.
I should really learn my domain.
I mean, yes.
Yeah, but that's. I used to work in marketing. I should know this.
Look, Google Nick Robertson, not the football player.
You've done your research, especially even because I'm from Brisbane. If you go Nick Robertson Brisbane, he's from Brisbane.
Oh, is he?
I'm getting drowned. I need to get a better name.
No, it's all right.
Yeah.
I think you just need to surpass him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what by you following me on Instagram, you listeners following me on Instagram, that's what we're going to do.
This is everybody listening. This is in your power.
Yes.
Yeah. How many does he have?
Yeah, too many. Yeah.
Oh, maybe when he retires then.
Yeah.
And then that'll be the best place as well on Instagram to keep an eye out for all your upcoming shows and stuff like that.
I'm very active on Instagram. I'd love to see it.
Perfect. And check out your fucking portfolio as well. Beautiful work.
Thanks, man.
And anyone that wants some photos, tits or not, hit up Nick.
Thank you so much for having me, Seb.
No, you're beautiful. And then the same as every week, won't be forgetting that pod across most of the social media platforms. Myself, Seb Muirhead, Muirhead, across Instagram and YouTube. If you like the show, please do rate, review it 5 stars. It really fucking helps. And if you got a couple of dollars, patreon.com/, won't be forgetting that pod genuinely helps as well. But thank you so much once again, the Visa guy.
Thanks, mate.